She kissed another man at her bachelorette party and laughed, "It's my last night of fun." So I canceled the $22,000 wedding, returned the ring, and disappeared before she got home. Megan and I had been together for 5 long years, 2 of which were spent as an engaged couple trying to build a future that we both claimed to want. Our relationship wasn't some fairy tale, but it had a steady pulse, that kind of consistency people crave when they think about settling down. She used to call me her anchor, the person who kept her grounded when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. And I took her words as gospel, truly believing that what we were creating was real, solid, and worth every sacrifice. We had real conversations, dreams of a house tucked just outside of Denver, quiet talks about kids, and a wedding that was rapidly approaching. I'd been taking on extra freelance work, slashing every unnecessary expense just to help fund that big day. I even sold my car to cover deposits on the venue and catering. We were barely scraping by, but I thought the struggle meant something, that we were investing in a life together. But looking back now, there were clues I ignored, small signs that something wasn't right. She started referring to the wedding as stressful, rather than exciting. Her face twitched slightly when I mentioned writing our vows. That spark that once lit up her eyes when we toured venues? It was gone. I brushed it off as wedding anxiety. I was nervous too. But at no point did I question whether her heart was truly in this, until everything crumbled in a 15-second video. She went off for her bachelorette trip, a beach house in Florida with her closest friends. I didn't make a big deal of it. In fact, I was happy she'd get a chance to unwind. She deserved some joy after months of wedding planning. Or so I thought. She left on a Thursday, and by Saturday night, my world was no longer the same. I was watching a game with Jake, my best man, when he suddenly paused mid-conversation, eyes fixed on his phone. He looked at me with a mix of shock and pity. "You need to see this," he said, holding out his phone. It was a Snapchat story, likely meant for a private list but posted publicly by mistake, probably by the maid of honor. The clip was brief, barely 15 seconds, but it was enough to shatter everything I knew. There she was, Megan, perched casually on some shirtless stranger's lap, drink in hand, laughing like she hadn't a care in the world. Then her voice cut through the background noise, crystal clear. "If I'm going to be someone's wife, I deserve one last taste of freedom, right?" And right there, in front of her friends, she leaned in and kissed him. Not a sloppy, drunken accident. It was bold, intentional. And her friends? They cheered. "That's the spirit, Meg," one of them yelled. I didn't say a word. I just handed Jake back his phone and stared ahead. He waited, expecting a reaction. Maybe an outburst or a breakdown. But I got up quietly and walked to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing, searching for explanations or excuses that would make it all feel less brutal. But deep down, I knew exactly what I had seen. That was her voice. That was her laugh. That was her decision. There was no sleep that night, just a steady stream of calls to vendors and planners. By morning, I was canceling everything: the venue, the DJ, the caterer. I watched $22,000 vanish in non-refundable deposits and fees, but I didn't flinch, because no amount of money compared to the cost of marrying someone who viewed commitment as a cage. I didn't hear from her the whole time. She was still off in her party bubble, probably completely oblivious. 2 days later, she walked through the door like nothing had changed. Her sunglasses still on, hair beach-waved and windswept, that same half-smile plastered across her face. She dragged her suitcase inside and tossed it down with a casual, "Only 6 days to go." I smiled back, but for a very different reason. She glided into the kitchen, humming, texting on her phone, acting like we were still planning a wedding instead of staring down the rubble of one. She was probably messaging the same friends who cheered while she kissed that guy. I slid my phone from my pocket and played the video, letting her words echo through the room. "If I'm going to be someone's wife, I deserve one last taste of freedom, right?" She froze, didn't even turn around right away, just tilted her head slightly as if trying to gauge how much I had seen. And then the kiss played. I paused the video and met her eyes. She didn't apologize, didn't even attempt to explain. Her first words were, "How did you find out?" That one sentence hit harder than the video ever could. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. No remorse, just panic at being caught. I took a deep breath and said calmly, "Doesn't matter how, just know it's over. Everything's canceled." Her eyes widened in shock. "Wait, what do you mean canceled? The wedding, the venue, the flowers, all of it? It's done, Megan." She rushed toward me, her voice rising in pitch. "You can't be serious. It was a joke. We were drinking. It didn't mean anything." I kept my voice steady. "Didn't look like a joke. And even if it was, who does that? Who thinks that's funny a week before our wedding? It was one kiss," she snapped. "And it was one too many." She blinked, her mouth opening like she had more excuses lined up, but nothing came. Maybe she expected a fight, screaming, crying, something explosive. But I was beyond that. I'd already grieved. I was already done. For the next 20 minutes, she trailed me around the house, shifting from apologetic to defensive, then back again. At one point, she asked if I was really going to throw away everything we had. And I just looked at her and said, "You already did. You just didn't expect me to notice." I walked out, got in my car and just drove. No destination in mind. I checked into a cheap motel, turned off my phone, and spent that night in silence.
No chaos. No tears.
Just space to breathe. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 37 missed calls. Megan, her mom, some of her friends. A few texts from people who already knew what had happened. Jake sent a message that nearly brought me to tears. "You did the right thing. You deserve better." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally see clearly. The next morning, I drove back to what used to be our home, but it no longer felt like mine. The air inside was stale, like something had shifted permanently. Megan was gone. No note, no apology scribbled on a napkin, not even a text left behind. The suitcase she had lugged in 2 days earlier had vanished just as quietly as she had arrived. I stood there in the entryway, letting that silence sink in, and for a moment, I felt relief. Not anger, not bitterness, just a deep, lingering calm. Like the storm had passed, and what was left behind wasn't wreckage. It was clarity. The days that followed were a mess of cancellations and awkward conversations. People reached out, confused or curious, wanting to know why the wedding was off. Some thought it was cold feet, others whispered about a fight. I didn't offer much, just told them it was over. I didn't owe anyone a full breakdown of what happened. That chapter belonged to me alone. The caterer tried to salvage some of the deposit, offering sympathy in her voice. The venue? Cold as ice. The DJ? Firm on his refund policy. $22,000 vanished, and I didn't blink. Because marrying someone who viewed loyalty as optional would have cost me a lifetime of peace, and I wasn't about to pay that price. A few days later, she tried reaching out again. Calls I didn't answer. Messages I left unread. "Can we please talk?" she texted. "I messed up." Then another, "Don't throw away 5 years." And finally, "You're overreacting. It wasn't what it looked like." Every message made my resolve stronger. It was exactly what it looked like. A deliberate betrayal dressed up as a Bachelorette experience. If she wanted to be free so badly, I was going to make sure she stayed that way. On what was supposed to be our wedding day, I sat alone in my apartment wearing old sweatpants, a glass of whiskey in hand, reruns playing on mute in the background. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Guests canceling flights, hotels, asking if they should still come into town. Some were kind. Others were nosy. Her mom called twice, leaving voicemails through tears. I didn't pick up. I didn't want to hear apologies that weren't hers to give. Megan stayed silent that morning. I thought maybe she'd finally gotten the message. Maybe she'd accepted that this time, there was no fixing what she had broken. But then, at around 3 in the afternoon, a knock came at the door. I opened it to find her standing there, no makeup, hair pulled back sloppily, eyes puffy from crying. In her hands was a small plastic bag. Inside was the engagement ring. I recognized it instantly. The same one I gave her 2 years ago in the Rockies, during a hiking trip when everything still felt possible. She didn't say much at first, just held it out and whispered, "I came to give this back." I took it from her without a word. She lingered in the doorway, like she was waiting for something. Forgiveness, maybe, a sign that I still loved her enough to try again. "I messed up," she said quietly, "but you've always been so forgiving, so calm. I thought maybe you'd cool down and we could work through it." Her voice trembled, but her words still missed the point entirely. I finally looked her in the eyes, and my voice was steady. "That's just it. You thought I'd take it. You thought I'd swallow my pride again and smooth things over like I always do." She looked away, silent. "You've said things before, jokes about me being too stable, too predictable. Like dependability is some kind of weakness. You didn't cheat because you were drunk, Megan. You cheated because you've been bored for a long time. You just didn't have the courage to say it out loud." She didn't argue. She just stared at the floor, ashamed. I continued, not out of anger, but because the words finally needed to be spoken. "I'm not even mad anymore. I'm tired. I spent 5 years loving someone who treated loyalty like it was a cage. You didn't just walk away from a wedding. You walked away from a man who showed up every single day, even when it was hard." She nodded, her fingers clutching the sleeves of her jacket. "I regret it," she said. "I really do." I stepped back from the door. "Good. I hope that regret stays with you, because I won't be around to watch you sort through it." She didn't fight, didn't cry anymore, just turned and walked away. That was the last time I saw her face to face. Weeks passed. I moved out of our shared apartment, found a smaller place near my job. Jake helped me haul boxes and cracked a joke about how this was the most peaceful breakup he'd ever witnessed. I laughed for the first time in weeks. I didn't know what Megan was telling people now. Maybe she spun the story, painted me as cold or distant. Maybe she told the truth. But whatever narrative she chose, it wasn't my burden anymore. What I had was peace. Not closure, not vindication, but peace. That kind that comes from choosing yourself when everything in you wants to beg for an explanation. That kind that comes when you refuse to settle for someone who doesn't see your love as a gift. I lost money, time, years, yes, but I gained something she'll never understand. Self-respect. I didn't just cancel a wedding. I walked away from a life that would have slowly killed my spirit. And I didn't look back. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If this story hit home, show some love, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real stories that remind us that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do.